On this edition of In the Gun, it is time to break down the WVU defense as we get ready for the upcoming 2025 season. All of that and more on this edition of ITG.
You are now watching Believe.
ITG.
All the pieces are in place for us to have a chance to win it all.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have.
There's Owen Schmitt in the building.
Like a runaway beer truck down the sidelines.
Where's he in? He in here, Jed Drenning?
I'm not much of an athlete.
The thing that's non-negotiable is playing hard and playing tough.
And Wesley, Valen, Uhler. You are in the gun.
Because once you enter this family, there's no getting out.
In the Gun, episode 262 of your new favorite WVU football podcast. I am Wes Uhler, as always, flanked by the best teammates in the business. We've got the signal caller, Jed Drenning, and the beer truck and barbecue man himself, Big Owen Schmitt. And, of course, this episode of ITG brought to you in part by our friends at Bet Online. The game starts here, and we are getting closer and closer now, less than 2 weeks before the games get going. Guys, just like that, Big O, next week is game week. That happened quick.
Yeah, it's really crazy, man. It's super exciting. I just got my tickets in the mail, put them on my phone, digital tickets. I'm pumped, dude. Pumped.
Can't wait. And Jed, pretty soon you'll be back on the sidelines patrolling the new look WVU offense and defense here in just about 10 days or so.
Yeah, I will be. And, we can't pass up an opportunity like we had with this 304 renewal package that came from the lack of Pitt fans' interest in coming to Morgantown to watch the game, right? So it opened up more 304, which were sold out in a handful of hours. So hats off to Mountaineer Nation. That's great because what was it, 400 and some odd tickets? I can't
412, which 412 is the area code of Pittsburgh, much like 304 is the area code of West Virginia. And that was my favorite part about it. Listen, guys, I don't know how much of a direct beeline you can put to WVU selling an additional 412 tickets and kind of pinning some of that on Pitt's lack of filling their allotment versus how much of that is true, which I'm sure it is, because I think in the 21st century, I think Pitt's only sold out their allotment, 7 or 8 games in Morgantown only 2 times. But it also seems a little too 412. Like I'm cynical enough to realize that there is some twisting of the knife and some jabbing there. I almost kind of hope it is. Like, I almost kind of hope that they're going over top with the insinuation that this is directly tied to a lack of Pitt fans being interested in coming to Morgantown, because that's what Pat Narduzzi's been doing for 4 years, telling lies and spinning narratives about the backyard brawl to get his fan base fired up and throwing chum into the water, red meat to his people. And I am glad that we are finally stopped trying to do that high road classy BS, and we're giving it right back to him. I love it.
So the best part about it, again, these numbers are just eerie, right? Even if they fudge them a little bit, more power to them.
Great, love
For
it.
a game being played on 9/13,
spin a narrative, baby. Exactly, that's what I mean. Pitt has done their narrative spinning. It's time for us to spin ours.
Think about it, Wes. 412 Pitt tickets went unsold, which we then transformed into our 304 package for West Virginia. Here's the best part about it. That's not just 412 tickets for the Pitt game. Those are 412 season tickets. So that's 412 tickets for every game because of that 304 package. Owen, I got buddies that purchased that the last couple of years. They rave about that thing. They love it. You're in a different spot. They say we never had a truly bad seat. Yeah. It's kind of cool. You tour the stadium. You're in a different spot each game, places that we've never sat before. You can get up to 4 people together in your grouping. They love it. And so the fact that, 400 plus of them sold out in a handful of hours, I can't be that surprised, right?
Well, it's just a neat feature. Like you said, a lot of people pick season tickets and they sit in those same seats the entirety of their holdings.
Decades,
it might be 10. You know what I'm saying? And to be able to kind of see, because football really is. I love watching football from the end zone. right? I love watching the plays open up and develop.
You would.
Some people don't like that.
Yeah.
Some people like watching it. Some people like watching it from the side and they just, I watch it from the side and I'm like, I can't really,
Yep.
I can't really, I just see where the ball went. I don't really see what happened. And from the end zone, it's just, I don't know if it's just because of the years of watching film and just
Yep.
kind of playing, too. I like how you can see the development. So, that's a cool feature that people get to experience for one. And then, the only thing is like sometimes the day of the time of the game, I know some of the, you could get put in a bad spot where the sun might hit you in the eyeballs, but hey, that's what you take. It's a great price point,
Oh,
honestly, and it's awesome for our fans.
I mean, guys, you're
First,
gonna pay probably if you're sorry, Jed, but like if you're
no,
gonna
you good.
if you're just trying to go to the pit game, like this was what I was explaining to some of my buddies who live, I for example, I've got an old college roommate who lives in New York and was like upset that he wasn't going to be able to buy pit single game tickets because he's a 7 hour drive away from Morgantown. He
Right.
just wants to go to one game a year. I said to him, I was like, dude, for $304 with fees, it's
Kidding.
$308. That's it. Like
Yep.
if you
Yep.
go to the pit game and one other game, that's worth it. Like you're going to pay $250, $300 for a pit ticket anyways.
Yes.
If you go to one game and are able to like transfer them to a friend or something, like I think it's pretty much worth it just for the pit game from what
I
you're going to
agree.
pay on the secondary market for a single ticket to the brawl value. Then you get five other games as well too. Like, and Owen, to your point, I do think like football and hockey have always seemed like sports to me where people just like their seats, right? You want to be in the end zone, you want to be in the upper deck, like you want to be behind the net, you want to be right at center ice, you want to be at the 40-yard line. But if you're somebody too who's never been a season ticket holder, like that's a pretty good entryway into I'm going to get to sit in 6 different areas, and by the end of the year, I'll probably have a really good idea of what I liked most and where I want to sit, full time going forward. If you do want to do it that way, it's a cool, unique concept for sure.
Well, and I always tell people, they're
Yeah,
like, "Hey,
absolutely.
can you get me down on the sidelines with you?" And I'm like, "Trust me when I say this. You don't want down there. You can't see. You can't see. I mean, that's literally the worst place in the world to
Hey,
watch a game. There's a reason coaches put other
Jed,
coaches in the booth. You know? Yeah.
dude, I'm telling you, I can't tell you how many people to ask me all the time, dude, can you get me on the sidelines? I want to watch. I was like, dude, you're not watching the game from there.
No,
You're just watching a bunch of like people in front of you, and like there's nothing.
you're so
All
obstructed.
it is
It's
kind
field
of more of
level.
a, huh?
It's it's field level. There's obstructions everywhere. It's not even like when we played,
Yeah,
Owen. You're at field level as well, but you're out in the middle of it. It's so different.
yeah.
You could see so much better then. But it's funny because Chad Scott and I kind of viewed this the same way, apparently, because the entire time Chad Scott was here, I'm always trying to stay about 20 yards ahead of the ball because to me, that's if you're going to be on the sidelines, that is the best vantage point. There's fewer obstructions. I want to see the role of the coverage and the secondary. That's just how my eyes are trained. I want to see what the defense is doing. Now, if I'm behind the ball, there's too many obstructions to see that. So I try and stay in front of the ball, and I spend the whole game working to stay about 20 yards ahead of the ball. So it's just difficult and it's a challenge. But it's funny you talk about that, Owen, because there are certain things I appreciate about an end zone angle. But I was always so glad that game tape, when you study, it's checkerboarded, as we call it. You got the sideline view from the booth, you got the end zone copy. You can see a little bit of both. There's certain things you see unfold from one angle that you can't see from the other, and there's a reason they provide all those different angles. But yeah, the sidelines, it's tough. It's just tough to see. It's not what people think it is. Yeah, there's a certain energy down there, no doubt about it. It's always cool when something big happens and you get to hear and feel the reaction. And you're immersed right in the middle of it. But as far as quality viewing, no, that's not the place to do it. That's really not
No,
the place to do it.
it's
Yeah,
really
I
not.
agree.
It's really not. And I think it's funny because I said like the football and hockey thing, I think is where people are most particular about their seats.
Yep.
I think basketball and baseball are like the only sports that I would want to sit courtside or, like right behind the catcher. Like For football, I want to be a little bit up to get that full vantage point. For hockey, like I don't want to be right on the glass. I want to be a little bit up so I can see everything that's going on the ice. It is funny, those similarities, certainly. Fun conversation there to get it. Let us know in the YouTube comments, if you're watching on YouTube, of course, where your favorite place to sit at Mountaineer Field is, and just football when you're taking in football in general. And if you are watching on YouTube, you've made it this far. Hopefully you're liking what you're seeing, liking what you're hearing. Make sure you hit that like button and give us a subscribe as well. A lot of people that make this possible. We ask you, of course, to support those who support us, and nobody supports us. Nobody supports the Mountaineers like our friends at Toothman Ford, JR, and all the good people there at Team Toothman. We all know cars cost less in Grafton. All right, gentlemen, let's get into it. Jed, I said last week, and I think Owen will appreciate this joke that I made when Jed and I did the WVU offense preview last week. I feel like at this point in the season now, the week before things get going, like at this point in the calendar, I know less about this WVU team than I have a WVU team since I was probably 11 or 12 years old, with a complete overhaul of the roster, a complete overhaul of the coaching staff. There is just so much uncertainty. And that was certainly the case on the offensive side of the ball, Jed, and definitely is for the defensive side of the football. But I do at least see a few more familiar names on the defensive side than I did on the offensive side when we're kind of going over the position breakdowns. But for you, new coordinator in Zac Alley, ton of new faces, both on the staff and on the roster. Where's the conversation start for this 2025 WVU defense?
Well, we talked last week, Wes, in discussing the offense about some of the early challenges they would face, the way the schedule unfolds from a non-league standpoint. There's no Penn State or Maryland or Virginia Tech or second P5 school lurking out there like there has been in recent years. But on the road at Ohio is not a challenge to be taken lightly. Defending MAC champs, first ever 11-win season in the history of the program. We talked about the challenges that the offense would face against the Ohio Bobcats defense and the things they did in the MAC and the things they did a few years ago when they upset Iowa State in Athens. Well, West Virginia obviously opens next week. It's hard to even believe that we're growing that close, like you were just saying, Wes, against Robert Morris. So that's what things are going to get started with this new system, with this new staff, with all these new faces and personnel, with Zac Alley settling in. And you hope you have an opportunity to work out some kinks. You never want to underestimate any opponent. I'm sure it drives Owen crazy when people do that, just like it drives me crazy. But if you take care of business, you should be working those kinks out in that first game. Now, when you head on the road to Athens, you're going to be facing an Ohio Bobcats offense in this case. The West Virginia defense will be pitted against an Ohio offense that led the MAC in total offense. A battle-tested veteran quarterback coming back, quality kid. They got playmakers at some key spots. They have to retool some things up on the offensive line. But in other words, it's not a layup. That's what I'm getting at. I don't want to spend the whole time doing an Ohio Bobcats preview. It's not a layup. Then you turn around, you come back for the backyard brawl in week 3. Here comes another battle-tested veteran quarterback and Eli Holstein, an offense that did some really positive things last year under a first-year coordinator as they started to spread things out. Pitt did end up, even despite that late season lag, they did end up 4th in the ACC in passing. So they have some weapons. They do some fun stuff on offense. So a couple challenges before you even get into league play for this West Virginia defense. Now, what might that look like? But what's funny about it is so many times this offseason, we've taken the opportunity to point out just how obvious it is that Mountaineer Nation really appreciates a good defensive discussion. In one of the Zac Alley episodes, breaking down his defense, I ran the numbers. And since Don Nehlen got here in 1980 with kind of the Mountaineer Football 2.0, bringing us into the new age and putting us on the national landscape on the map, when you look at every time we've ever finished a season ranked in the top 25 of one of the major polls, if you average out our defensive scoring ranking in all those seasons that we finished the year ranked, the average defensive ranking was 27th. So, yeah, it was 27th on offense too, ironically. But what I'm getting at is it takes with West Virginia to succeed, in the last 40 plus years, a balanced version of football with some nasty defense being played that's among the best in the country. Can we elevate ourselves once again? We obviously know the struggles we encountered last year. That's been well chronicled. But this is when you listen to Zac Alley talk, that's so far out of his mind, out of sight, out of mind. I mean, he was asked a couple weeks ago by the media, "Hey, you ever worry about this or you worry about that?" He said, "Look, I never take the field, boy, thinking, oh man, I think we're going to give up 50 today. I hope we win a shootout." He's like, "I don't see the world that way." And he really doesn't. There's a certain swagger that he has earned by the track record, Owen, that he's established in this really short career of his. I mean, he's kind of coming out of nowhere. Owen, I'll toss to you to get some initial thoughts, but look at what this guy's done. It wasn't that long ago that West Virginia was dropping 70 on Clemson in the Orange Bowl, right? Well, the reason I bring that out in this conversation, you might know or you might not by this point, guess who was a first year student assistant volunteering on that Clemson staff? Zac Alley, as a first year student at Clemson. We dropped 70. They fired their coordinator. Here comes Brent Venables. Next thing you know, Zac Alley's with Brent Venables for several years. That's who he learned from. And here we are. But that wasn't that long ago. And Zac Alley has done so many incredible things to build his own brand since then that we'll get into. But he's still a young guy. But there's a new energy, Owen. And I do think he's a guy with a hard edge. And it's going to be fun to see how some of these kids respond to how he coaches.
For nearly 20 years, Fortis has been the nation's leader in providing guaranteed roof performance programs for commercial buildings. Fortis offers roof performance solutions that feature extensive initial and ongoing reconditioning for commercial buildings as an alternative to traditional replacement, with long-term performance guarantees that are backed by global leader Lloyd's of London. Fortis offers a comprehensive range of roof performance management programs that provide financial security, extend the life of our customers' roofs, and make a significant impact on ROI. Fortis is currently improving performance and increasing ROI for customers at more than 4,800 locations, with more than 140 million square feet protected, including many Fortune 500 companies that have turned to Fortis to save money, gain financial certainty, and extend the life of their existing roofs. Fortis has helped customers save more than $520 million in capital roof replacement costs for an average ROI of over 250%. To learn more, visit fortis.us.com. Fortis, roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed.
Nobody supports the blue and gold Mountaineers like Toothman Ford. With over 20 NIL deals and counting, Toothman Ford continues to rally behind our student athletes. And it's time we rally and support the dealer that supports the Mountaineers. Not only does Toothman Ford offer the best prices in the state on pre-owned, their never over MSRP campaign on new Fords guaranteed to save you thousands. Drive with pride all season long, knowing you're supporting the dealer that fuels our Mountaineers. Toothman Ford, where cars cost less, in Grafton and at toothmanford.com.
When the sun's just rising and the work won't wait, you need the equipment that works just as hard as you do. Johnson Equipment delivers power, performance, and reliability day in, day out. Whether you're plowing fields, hauling loads, or planting the future, our tractors are built to take it and then some. Strong, reliable, ready. 0% financing available for up to 84 months on select models.
Johnson Equipment, farming made easy.
And a while ago I went to their coaching clinic, and after Coach Rod speaks, whatever, they have, like, each coach goes to their perspective room, and Zac was speaking. He was one of the guys that I kind of wanted to listen to, and he does have a new age approach to it, and like, he was one of those guys which I loved, which kind of reminded me of my younger brother Taylor. He has a fix for everything. He you know what I mean? Like, there's not an answer you're going to give him where he's just going to be stumped. Like, he'll come up with it. He's going to come up with something. And I think what's interesting is to see his success he's had as a young coach now under a guy we both know, and to see the structure of how Rod builds a football player, both on offense and on defense, and just that young energy. He's an upbeat guy. You can tell he's fired up to be doing what he's doing. He's passionate about it. And I think you're going to see some of that bleed over, especially as the season progresses. But up front, we got a great tune-up game to kind of get the jitters out and just kind of play some ball. And I think we're going to see some, and you alluded to it a little bit before the show. This is going to be a tough defense, and kind of coming back and getting things working again. You want an attitude on defense.
Yeah, and you want a story that's kind of provides some insight into Zac Alley's attention to detail, not leaving any stone unturned. I've said on here before that a buddy of mine used to be on staff with him as one of his student assistants, grad assistants, and he said that Zac would want to start the week with personnel tendencies for whatever the upcoming opponent was, whoever it was. Sunday morning, he wanted 2 or 3 sheets of every personnel tendency, and he would get on the treadmill and he would start his week by memorizing those personnel tendencies. That's kind of his secret sauce. He wants a head start before he gets into the papers in his hand, before he gets into the game plan. There are certain things he commits to memory. So in real time, he instinctively just knows, oh, that's right. When they do this, they do that. And few are better than him, especially at this early point in his career. But I had a friend of mine that used to work with him, and this was last year, as when Zac was at Oklahoma, and Oklahoma was getting ready to play Auburn. Well, he reached out to my buddy, who he hadn't worked with in probably 5 years, and he said, "Hey, close to 5 years." He said, "Hey, I'm going through my old stuff. They're getting ready to play Auburn. Hugh Freeze, the head coach at Auburn." He said, "I'm going through my old stuff that we used at Monroe against Liberty back in 21." He said, "I got my old notes and my old stuff. I'm going through it here. I'm reaching out to you to make sure I'm not missing anything. Do you still have your version of what we used?" Because in that game in 21, Malik Willis was at Liberty, who went on to play for the Titans, and Liberty was doing incredible things. And they went into Monroe. Monroe wasn't very good, and they were overmatched, Monroe was, and they were 4 touchdown underdogs, 29-point underdogs. They beat Liberty. They beat Hugh Freeze and the Liberty Flames. Zac Alley forced, 4 turnovers, I think, against that Liberty defense. Malik Willis was picked off 3 times. When you go back and study the tape, which I did this off season, he had Malik Willis seeing ghosts and seeing doubles. So here he is all these years later, facing Hugh Freeze yet again, except this time in the SEC, saying, "Hey, I have my notes from so many years ago when we faced this guy. I'm reaching out to you to make sure I'm not missing anything in my notes that you might have in your notes." That's just how thorough a guy he is. That's how he's wired.
Yeah. And another thing you had mentioned too before, Jed, was, well, and this is what he was something that he was speaking about at the coaching clinic. The amount of movement that happens before the football
A lot of stemming.
is just crazy. It's very, in my opinion, advanced and tough for, it's got to be tough on quarterbacks. And I almost want to say he has got a great advantage in this, let's say, modern era of football just because of turnover year after year, guys installing this. I mean, you have to be a absolute master of your profession to understand the kind of movement and where it's even coming from. Like I'm still really trying to understand his whole thought process on his defense. And like I said, it's gonna be fun to see guys playing tough, playing to the whistle blows, obviously, and then just see the multiple, bringing guys from everywhere is
Everywhere.
what's going to be fun. And I know he likes to bring them. So I'm hoping to see, I hope we get a little couple dingers, this first game against Robert. Just get the fluff out. You know what I mean? You got to
Yeah,
get the
yeah. Oh, yeah.
bugs out a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
And when you talk about that pre-snap movement, a lot of stemming and a lot of movement on the defensive line, showing one look and changing to another right before or as the ball is being snapped. And you talked about in the modern age, it's difficult to develop continuity because of roster turnover. You need to communicate at a very high level on the offensive line. Well, what that does, a defense that presents that much movement, it really challenges and stresses the communication ability of an offensive line. You better really have things buttoned up because when you're seeing one thing, and as a center, you've made your call, and all of a sudden that one thing right as or right before the ball is snapped, they're very good from a timing standpoint at doing this. you see something completely different. Now you're stuck in a bad call. So what are you going to do? You're going to try and make another call and delay that's 5-7 seconds. So it disrupts things offensively. And the next thing you know, if you don't communicate that perfectly, you could have a missed assignment. It's a 3-yard loss. It's a TFL. Now you're off schedule. Now you're behind the sticks, which is kind of what he does to you. He considers himself, and I kind of chuckle when I hear him say this, but he considers himself an even front quarters defense, right? And it's funny to say that he considers anything a base because he changes up what he does so much. First, the numbers we'll get into here are from a personnel standpoint. When you break down, for those listening or watching that don't understand this, aren't as far out in the weeds as we are, when you break down personnel looks defensively, that's how they configure them. So let's say that you're in a 4-3, all right? To simplify that, that means 4 defensive line type bodies. Forget what the look is. 4 defensive line type bodies, 3 linebacker type bodies, which leaves you, by process of elimination, 4 defensive backs. That would be a 4-3 or a 4-3-4. Look at some of the things over the last couple years alone that he's done. At Jack State, when he was last with Rich in 2023, he ran a 3-2-6 28% of the time, far more than a lot of teams run it, right? He ran the odd stack or odd stack personnel 22% of the time, which was the second highest usage rate in the country. When you go to a 2-3-6, just 2 true down D linemen, 3 backer body types, 6 DBs. He ran that 18% of the time, which was the highest usage rate of that particular personnel look in the country. So in other words, what that means, the teams they're facing don't see these looks against other teams as often as they see it against him. Now let's fast forward last year to Oklahoma. You would expect one of the fundamental differences between a G5 program like Jack State and a premium program like Oklahoma that gets blue bloods in there. You're going to have more beefy, big-bodied NFL-type body types populating that defensive line at the point of attack. Some of the numbers reflect that. Odd stack, 30% of the time now, okay? 3-4-4, which is more of an NFL-style defense. 3 down linemen, 4 backers, 4 DBs. 23%, which was his second most common. I'm going in order. And now let's go back to the 4-3 that Brent Venables is known for. He ran a 4-3 17% of the time, the 12th highest usage rate in the country. But the funny thing was, it was their third most common defense. So you really don't know what's coming against this guy. He will literally do wholesale changes in a week to ambush an offense, and they don't know what's coming. And it's fun to watch him do this. I don't know how much we talked about the Texas game in some of the other episodes. I broke it down in one of the episodes on Zac's defense. It's misleading to see the final score. Texas had the horses. They ended up winning, going away 34-3, ran Oklahoma off the field ultimately. But the reason Oklahoma had any kind of puncher's chance early on and hung around as long as they did before Texas separated was because Zac Alley was throwing looks at Texas. And it's very obvious when you study this. He had Quinn Ewers confused. He had Sark kind of out of sorts. And they weren't expecting some of the things they were seeing. They started the game with 3 and outs. They shut them out for the first quarter until they settled in and said, hey, let's simplify this and just use our Jimmies against their Joes. So he's creative. He's outside the box. He will, first of all, ask himself, what are we good at? And second of all, what are you not good at? What are you uncomfortable? What do I see on tape that an opposing offense doesn't like to do? Well, obviously, it's my job. It's incumbent upon me to force them to do what they don't like to do. And I need to find a way to do that or map a path to do that by asking my guys to do what they are good at. And he brings those things together. And it's worked very well at every stop that he's had.
Certainly has, and that's why he was at one point the youngest coordinator, defensive coordinator in the country, and why he was, the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma at 33 years old, and right, is that right? 33 now, he's 34, I believe. Is that correct, Jed?
Ish. Either that was his ACT score because they're both about the same range.
Exactly right. I think maybe he's like 36 or 37 now, but regardless,
no, I think he is. I think he's 33, 34. Yeah.
You know what? Actually, I do. For some reason, I think he's slightly younger than me, and I'm 34, which is just crazy.
Let's
I mean,
think
I
about
love
that.
you. I love you guys, but I'm sitting here on a podcast. He's prepping for, for a
Now,
college football season.
Didn't Terry say it was 27? Wes, I think he's 31, 32. Didn't Terry say that he hired him at 27 at
Yeah,
Monroe?
when he
All
was
right,
young, when he
let's
was
find
three.
this out.
I was going to say he's 33 years old.
Okay.
Wait a second. No, he just
Oh,
turned
younger.
he just turned 34 on Sunday. His birthday's August
Okay.
17th, 1991, so he's like 5 months younger than I am.
Wow.
I'm February of
Wow.
91, he's August of 91.
And here he's been a coordinator at multiple stops. Okay, he's been a coordinator here.
Yeah, that
Oklahoma,
makes me feel really
Jacksonville,
well with what I'm doing with
Monroe.
my life.
I mean, this is very telling too. A lot of this, I feel like I'm rehashing some of what I covered in that 2-part series. So,
You're a
hint,
real
hint, if you
overachiever,
haven't
Wes.
watched the 2-part series, go back and watch it. Right, but he was a special teams coordinator for 1 year, and that was at Boise in 2020. And all he did that year, he was named by I think it wasn't PFF, it was one of the other outlets. They named him National Co-Special Teams Coordinator of the Year in his 1 year as a coordinator. His dad was at the game. His dad was on the Clemson National Championship team in '81 for Danny Ford. He was a player himself. Well, his dad was at a Colorado State game against Boise, and he asked Zac before the game. He said, "Hey, is there anything I should watch for from the stands?" And Zac's like, yeah, actually, it's strange you'd ask. He said they do this thing where their long snapper, especially early in the game, he spins the ball to the right, yard and a half. When they're punting in pump formation, he said, so we're going to overload that with a couple of backers, and we're going to block a punt. So he told his dad to watch for it. 52 seconds into the game, they blocked a punt. They scored. It was one of 3 blocked kicks for touchdowns that day by Boise State. So This is his 1 year as a special teams coordinator. So his attention to detail and what makes him tick and how this flows together. But what I want to get into, guys, in my view, there are 3 things that bring his defense to the fore and really make it click. So what are your comments? And we'll jump into some of those 3 things. Owen, did you freeze up on us?
He's still there.
Okay.
What
are your comments? What are your comments before we jump into the 3 things and we'll start breaking down some numbers for you in terms of tendencies with him?
With Zac?
Yeah.
Is that what you asked, Jed? What do you mean, Jed?
Well, here's what I'm going to get into. I just want to kind of elaborate from you before we jump into the numbers. Yeah.
Oh, with Zac, as far as what I'm looking for this year?
Yep.
Dude, okay. So personnel rotation, especially on the defensive line. Just seeing, how we work with those guys up front. I'm definitely going to want to see, this week, I guess. Obviously, the personnel rotation, it's going to depend on whether we go up or down. I mean, if we're blowing them out by halftime, I'm sure he's going to rotate a lot of different people in, or maybe he won't. I don't know. I don't know. You know what I mean? And that's what's exciting about just this year. It's kind of some of it's new, but a lot of some of it's old, some of it's new. You know what I mean? And so obviously looking for personnel rotation up front, just seeing, are we getting pressure? Are we able to create pressure, hurries on the quarterback? Are we stout in the run game? What are we going to do to stop the run game? And then I'd like to see just some of those looks. And here's the thing too, just based off of kind of what you said, we're not going to see the same thing we saw, next Saturday. I feel like the next week and the week before, he is very good at changing things up. So for me, it's changing things up on the D line, and blitz pressure. That's really only 2 things, but that's really what I'm looking for.
He's very pressure oriented. He is. He likes to say pressure breaks pipes, and we'll get into some of the pressure numbers at his stops. But I kind of, let's start macro and let's go micro. That'll provide some perspective for people. Okay, here's a number to start with, and then I'll tell you why I'm starting with it. Okay, if you look at the number of 40-plus yard plays surrendered, okay, big splash plays, right? 40-plus yards. How has his defense done the last couple of years in giving up 40-yard plays? And then you'll start to understand what the strength of his defense is as we work past this. Well, last year at Oklahoma, they gave up 15 of them, which was 100th in the country. Below average, right? Never good. 2 years ago, Jack State, 40-plus yard plays, 13, 62nd in the country, middle of the pack. Again, certainly not going to blow your skirt up. That's not what this defense is. It's not going to always keep a lid on everything. It's right there in the middle of the pack with all these other defenses in terms of, it'll allow a big play now and then. That's just the nature of when you're bringing that much pressure. You can't always keep a lid on it, though he does try by design to do that. He doesn't go for broke every time he pressures you. He puts some thought into it. He tries to keep a shell on things, but doesn't always work. Sometimes you're getting about big plays. That's not the strength of what he does defensively. You know what the strength of what he does defensively? What he does bottle up? Here are the three things, starting with number one. He limits rhythm-building plays, not the big 40 or 50-yard plays, the plays of 10-plus yards. Stop and think. What he does defensively, he cuts you so slightly you don't even know you're bleeding. He's taken something away from you, but it's so subtle, you don't really know what's missing. You just know you can't develop rhythm. The big plays might be there. He might give up 1-2 big plays. You're used to having 1-2 big plays. But what you're not used to is somebody bottling up your 15-yard plays, your 12-yard plays, your 18-yard plays. Those plays, Owen, that when you get 2 or 3 of them on a drive, next thing you know, you got a 6-play drive and you're scoring. But when you don't allow those, you don't allow the offense to develop rhythm. So number one out of 3, he limits rhythm-building plays, and I define that as those 10-plus yard plays, 10 to 20 yards, right, that an offense so desperately needs to develop rhythm. Number 2, he forces you into far more third down situations than you're accustomed to. I mean, it's nothing to see him force an opposing offense into 15, 17 third down situations. So what that does, and they're not used to seeing that many. They're used to having a dozen or so third downs in a game, right? What that does is you have to blow through your third down call sheet, and he gears so many things towards stopping you on third down or bottling you up on third down and learning your personnel tendencies, as we talked about at the top of the show, that after you get through your best calls, now you're doubling back through. That's one of the tricks he does too. Number 2, forces you into way more third downs than you're used to. Okay? Because he's not going to give you those cheap first down, those 15-yard gains, boom, 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 to drive down the field. If you're going to drive down the field, sometimes you might, but you're going to have to earn it with a bunch of third downs. And then finally, when you put those two things together, that limits your scoring opportunities. He limits the number of red zone trips that he allows opposing offenses to do, breach the 20. When you're not giving up 10-plus yard plays, and you're forcing them to a bunch of third downs, that's a tough way for an offense to make a living, to matriculate all the way down the field to get into the red zone. So let's start breaking down some of these numbers. First, let's look at those rhythm-building plays we talked about. 2 years ago, Jack State, I'll keep bringing up 2023. It's the last time he was with Rich. They allowed just under 12 plays of 10-plus yards per game. That was the fewest in Conference USA. That's his trick. They allowed the fewest 20-plus yard plays in Conference USA. So again, not the gashers, the 40 or 50-yarders. Probably allows just about as much as anybody else somewhere in the middle of the pack. That's not what separates him. The method to his madness is not letting you get into a rhythm. So they allowed the fewest in Conference USA 2 years ago at Jack State. Last year at Oklahoma, the Sooners allowed 10.5 plays of 10-plus yards per game. Fewest in the SEC allowed. You see a pattern emerging here? This is what he does to you. You don't even know what's hitting you. By the time you figure it out, you're like, wow, that's what's missing. It's not obvious. It's subtle. And it doesn't hit you until it's too late. So let's go into the third downs forced. Jack State, 2 years ago, they forced almost 16 a game. Most in Conference USA. Wow. Second most per game in the country. He forces you into a lot of these critical third down situations. And then he builds his call sheet to offset your call sheet. And your best call should be your third down, your red zone calls, right? So, highly successful at doing so at Jack State. How did he do last year at Oklahoma? Just over 15 third downs Oklahoma forced opposing offenses into last year, 12th most in the country. And then finally, let's round this out. We talked about the red zone trips. 2 years ago, Jack State, they only allowed just over 2.5 red zone trips per game, fewest in Conference USA. Conference USA, 11th fewest in the country at Jack State 2 years ago. Last year, Oklahoma, 2.7 a game. That's all they allowed. Fewest allowed by Oklahoma defensively in over a decade. Second fewest allowed in the SEC. 14th fewest in the country. You see all this ties together. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, bada boom, bada bang, bada bang. It's amazing how he does this, and it's when you really pop the hood and dig into it, it becomes obvious. But when it's happening to you, it's not obvious. It's subtle. You don't know what's happening to you. And especially when it's happening with him throwing all these different looks. And Owen, you talked about the pressure. Pressure is such a critical part of what he does. A couple of years ago at Jack State, led Conference USA in total pressures, 180 for the season. Sacks, 38. Also led to conference. Quarterback hurries, 129. Those are kind of those remember me shots you're leaving on quarterbacks. Trust me, they impact an opposing quarterback. When you keep like Jeff Castile always told me, he's like, hey, you've taken tests, you've sat at your desk and taken tests. It's hard enough to maintain focus, right? He said, now just imagine if somebody comes up behind you with a ruler and every couple seconds, whack, smacks you in the back of the head while you're taking your test. He said, now, it doesn't knock you out, but it might be a little more hard to focus on your test, isn't it? Well, that's it. Exactly. And that's what these quarterback hurries and these quarterback hits are. They're remember me shots. And it knocks you out. Once again, we go back to that word rhythm. He doesn't like to allow offenses to develop rhythm. He keeps quarterbacks out of rhythm. Last year at Oklahoma led the Southeastern Conference in pressure rate 39% of the time. That was the highest pressure rate in the SEC. And they led the SEC in pressures with 6 or more rushers. So when he brings extra bodies and numbers, he makes it count. He affects the play. He affects the quarterback. Even if it's incompletion to lead you to another one of those third downs. They had 20 such pressures last year, which was the most in the Southeastern Conference. So there is a symmetry to this. And I like it's like numbers. The flow of it kind of speaks to you when you start understanding and appreciating the interconnectivity to all these different things that don't seem to have anything to do with each other, but they are all connected. And that's the beauty of what he does defensively.
He's got a game plan. It's
going to be fun to kind of see what's going down.
No, it absolutely is. And Jed, I hope one thing that comes with that is more turnovers as well, too, because, I think we could obviously now in hindsight go back and look at the 6 years of Neal Brown and why it didn't work out. But man, I think one of the things at the top of that list is that the overall negative turnover differential year by year and over the course of those 6 years, not only do you need those remember me shots and knocking you off rhythm and sacks and all those things, but to see an uptick in some turnover and some turnovers would be nice as well too.
It certainly would. And what you're saying is incredibly valid. The Big 12, as we know, competitively, the difference between Team A and Team B is so often razor thin. It's razor thin. So whoever blinks first is going to come up short. Some of these games are going to be decided in the fourth quarter. I mean, we saw those numbers last year compared to other conferences. How many more Big 12 games were decided by one possession than other conferences? There is a ton. Now, it's not a dirty word to say parity. There's a ton of parity in this conference. It makes for good football. But when there is that much parity and you don't win the turnover margin, either by being sloppy with the football or by not being opportunistic enough defensively and getting those takeaways and racking those up, it's going to catch up to you. And no single number caught up to Neal Brown more. And I'm convinced of this. In 6 years, Neal was minus 23 as teams were overall in those 6 years in turnover margin. If he's plus 5, he's still here. If he's 0, he's still here, right? I mean, you can't do that in a league with that much parity over the arc of time. And the rub really was we weren't that opportunistic. The most we forced was 16, okay? If you look at it, here's some numbers for you as well to give some perspective. And this is it's not apples and oranges, but it's also not apples and orangutans. It's there is a little bit of a parallel here. So we'll get to that. But in 6 years, Neil's teams forced defensively 77 turnovers. That's an average of just under 13 a year. That's not very opportunistic. So this really wasn't a putting the ball in harm's way issue.
Sure.
They were typically in the top half of the league from ball security standpoint.
It was no, more, that's what I mean.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I remember that number. 12.8, just under 13 per year we forced. And we were minus 23 in Neil's 6 years, and that really hurt him. Owen, in Rich's 7 years, do you know what he was? We're just coming out of a last 6 years, we were minus 23. In Rich's 7 years in Morgantown, he was plus 63.
Cool.
They averaged
29.6
takeaways a year. 29.6 takeaways a year compared to the 12.8 that we've been averaging. At Jack State, he was plus 16. So this hasn't gone away. This isn't like 20 years ago and he forgot how to do this. He understands and appreciates the value. Now more than ever, we spent a lot of time this offseason talking about possessions because Rich really does preach that. The value of possessions, there's a greater premium on possessions now with the changes to the clock and everything else. Possessions are worth their weight in gold. Well, that's where that translates most directly is your turnover margin. You're stealing possessions every time you go a +1. That's what you're doing. You're shorting the other guy and you're getting an extra possession out of it. So he was plus 63 in his 7 years in Morgantown. They forced 207, averaging nearly 30 a year. Zac Alley, let's look at his last couple years. We never had a season with Neil where we forced more than 16. Rich never had a season in Morgantown where he forced fewer than 24. So it was humming on both sides of the football. Zac Alley the last couple of years forced 23, forced 21. So it's something that he understands, works on, preaches. Every D coordinator in America preaches the value of takeaways, right? It's just how many can actually get through and impact the outcome. Because Rich likes to say it's almost like this, I don't want to call it a subtle dig, but it's funny as a former offensive guy hearing Rich say it. And he's the head coach, but he's also the OC, right? And he always likes to say that, hey, most turnovers are they're not forced. You know, that they're mental errors with the offense. It's true. There's a lot of merit to that. Okay. A lot of them are stupid decisions by the offense, okay, or bad reads by the quarterback. But sometimes they're forced. And good defenses have a tendency to impact.
There's a lot of punching that ball out and getting hands on passes at the line of scrimmage. And
I would even say this, Wes. It's as simple as force. Okay, let's concede that yes, offensive mistakes do happen to lead to turnovers. But you know what leads to more offensive mistakes? A lot of third and longs.
A lot of third and long.
When an offense is allowed to stay ahead of schedule against
a lot of down and distance,
they're not as desperate. And they don't lapse into a bunch of mistakes. When you knock an offense off schedule, they're struggling to find their rhythm. They're constantly facing third downs. Mistakes are downstream from that. That's just the nature of it. Quarterbacks will ultimately blink. We hate that stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you might get a beat on some of it, but you're not going to get a beat on all of it. And all these crazy exotic looks that he's throwing at you, every one of those third downs represents some version of an opportunity for Zac Alley to come out of his mad scientist lab and dial up. Like he even said last week, hey, from an install standpoint, is your whole defense in? He said, it's never in. He said, I'm coming up with new stuff every week based on what I'm seeing.
Sure.
So he's never done inventing, right? Now, as a quarterback, when you have to contend with that, it drives you mad. And when you have to contend with it on third down 15, 16 times a week, when you're having to usually face it 11 or 12 times a week, all of a sudden that becomes more frustrating. Mistakes happen to an offense when you put them in these adverse positions to lead to those mistakes. So, yes, both those things are true. Turnovers are often an offense's mistakes, but a defense can contribute to those mistakes as well, even if it's not directly physically impacting that play.
It's a great point.
You might have impacted it on first down by a 3-yard TFL that created a second long, that creates a third long. Then now the quarterback's more desperate, forces it into a window he shouldn't. That ball's picked off. Was that a bad decision by the quarterback? Yes. But if it's 3rd and 2, that doesn't happen. It happens because it's 3rd and 12, right? So
totally,
all those things are true.
No, that makes a ton of sense. It absolutely
does. Well, and then
does.
Jed, what you were saying about is just you guys what we were talking about there for a second too, just the pressure aspect of it. You put somebody in a a down and distance situation where they're behind the ball, and you're saying they're going to make a Rich is saying, hey, they're usually offensive mistakes, but once you start getting pressure added to all those scenarios, now hey, now the lineman's getting pushed back. Okay, so now he's a yard back in the backfield. Now instead of that running back, maybe he's doing the same thing he's usually doing, but now his handhelds are not there. He's still getting to his position where he's putting in the ball in his outside arm. You're one step behind here or there. Jed, you talking about whacking the quarterbacks on the hurries. I mean, all those little things end up correlating into a mass production of just a big ass defensive tornado, basically. Um,
Good
that
way to
ends up
say it.
spiraling out of control, especially when you get behind. And what you're talking about, the turnover thing is, look, when you can get a stolen possession, it's only worth a shit. Sorry, it's only worth a Schmidt if you get points out of it,
Yes.
right? If you get points out of it, or if you can
Points off
turn the
the
field
turnover.
over,
Yeah. Yeah,
right,
that's
where
right. One
you
of the two.
can put
Yep.
yourself in a at least a defensive
Yeah.
position where now it's a longer field for the offense. But there's a lot of ways to look at all that stuff. But I would even say that was probably one of the biggest things in the NFL that was preached to me the most was, look, one turnover, your odds of winning the game
Dude.
are now,
Oh
I
yeah.
think it was like 85% or something after just
Yeah.
one. You know what I mean? And then obviously the list goes down and down, and the percentage goes, way out after you get. But you can look at those three bowl games we played in. Turnovers had a big deal.
Sure.
Heck, we probably had, it's felt like I want to say the Fiesta Bowl, we had like four or five turnovers in it.
Yeah. Think of listen,
Well, that's how you got
I
think of
that
mean, so
the
giant
it's
lead
always
against
been a big
Georgia.
part of his offense or
think of
team.
the Orange Bowl when that game really broke open for WVU. It was
Oh yeah.
when Darwin Cook and those guys punched the ball out at the goal line and took
Yeah.
it back 99 yards for a touchdown, right? No, Owen, you're absolutely right. I don't care where you go. Anyone who analyzes football and data and I'm talking high level college football, the NFL, it doesn't matter. Any advanced analytics, any statistics, any data-based
Oh yeah.
analysis, they will tell you the number one indicator of who wins a game is turnover margin, and the second and third and fourth things are not particularly close. I mean, like it's a substantial gap
Yeah.
at the highest levels of football in college and in the NFL. And yeah, and
Yes.
that's something I would really like to see that number, go from 12 or 13 a year to 20 or 21. It doesn't have to be 29, 30, guys. Just give me 20, 21, 22, and we'll be cooking with gas.
The closer you get to those numbers, the more meaningful football you'll be playing in November.
Yes,
That's
no
just a
doubt. No
direct
doubt.
correlation of that without
Yeah.
question. And here's the beauty of it, guys. I, Wes, you and I talked about this, I think, one of these previous episodes. I was trying to find a way to really do justice to what a great job Zac Alley does as a complement to a tempo offense like Rich, because not every D coordinator is built for
Good
that.
point. Good
To
point.
say, hey, you're going to defend more snaps than any team in your conference. You cool with that? Most should be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, it's not what I signed up for. Not only does Zac Alley not mind, but I think there's another side to this, guys. When you look at, I'll give you the metric that I created, and then I'll give you something I was thinking of here back when you were playing, Owen. There's a metric I came up with called plays faced per point allowed. Okay. Now, it means literally what it says. How many points on average did you give up per game compared to how many snaps you defended? Okay. So, for instance, last year, West Virginia gave up 2 points for every play they defended. Or, excuse me, the other way around 32 points per game, 64 snaps. Okay. Now, you're going to work your way up to Jack State, 3.5 plays run per point allowed. Oklahoma, 3 plays run per point allowed. So you can be on the field a lot against him, and that doesn't mean your point total is getting racked up. He will defend a ton of plays. He's a perfect complement for Rich because Rich is going to ask him to defend a bunch of plays and the only thing happened about it. So thinking back to when you were playing, Owen, You remember when you guys blew out Maryland at home like 45-24? Well, that game, and it was a perfect example. When you do what Rich does from a style standpoint offensively, you come out hell-bent for leather, going a million miles an hour. You're not pumping the brakes. It's the fastest, craziest thing anybody on the other sideline has seen since the last time they faced you, because they don't regularly see this. And you jump out 14-0, 21-0. You know what that starts to do? You know what your offense starts to do? Impact the other offense. Your offense is impacting their offense, because you're now making their offense more desperate. Oh boy, this isn't slowing down anytime soon. I got to scrap my game plan. He's not pumping the brakes. It's going to be 35-0 before I blink. I better start calling this, and this. And I didn't think I was going to have to call that until the fourth quarter if we're getting blown out. I got to call it now. So now you get more desperate. You make more poor decisions. You make less advised calls. So go back and watch. When you're up 21-0 on Maryland, what's Friedgen doing? He's throwing the ball into harm's way. Sam Hollis is getting picked off, and they're digging a deeper hole because of what you guys unleashed on them offensively. So I think there's part of Zac Alley that recognizes that, and almost it fuels them defensively. When Rich gets humming on offense, they kind of in turn say, hey, all right, shark smelling blood, let's go. You start to sense it from the other sideline. They're now going to have to do something desperate to try and get a splash play to try and desperately keep pace, and they're going to do things they otherwise wouldn't do that are off script, that are more desperate, which can lead to turnovers and mistakes as well. And Owen, when a team is as well coached as they're going to be, because when you look at the history of these position groups and who they're coached by, you see things when you study tape, Owen. You were a running back in pass pro, right? So it was your job when you were throwing the football, if you weren't in the route, unless you were hot, your job was to protect the quarterback. Now, you know that, and I'll get to my point here, running backs are coached. If you have two threats, one's an A-gap and one's an edge threat, you read that inside out, don't you? Because the worst thing you can allow is an A-gap pressure. That's the worst thing. That's the worst calamity in the world for an offense. A-gap pressure dooms you from the outset, right?
You make it simple, you know what I mean? Hey, you're taking the closest guy.
That's right. And the closest guy is what? A-gap, right? That's how you were coached. So when you watch Zac Alley's defenses, and this is just, again, something, one of those cracks between the keys, something that's kind of subtle. Everybody kind of on some level coaches this, but some have a skill or an ability to hone in on more than others. What he'll do is he'll show or sim a pressure. He'll simulate it and show like a 6 or 7 man pressure look. Well, he's going to drop and only bring 4. But what he's going to do, and you're facing, let's say, an 11 personnel offense, you got a single running back, sidecar next to the quarterback in the shotgun. Well, he'll take the inside backer as part of that show, as part of that simulation, and he will so heavily threaten that A-gap that running back sees nothing in the world except that, right? And that guy's, you can tell watching the tape. I mean, I'm sure his nostrils are flared. He's making noises. He's growling, everything, because that running back has a bead on that A-gap threat, that backer. Well, guess what happens? When the ball snapped, that backer stays there, takes an extra step into that A-gap to further engage that running back. Here comes that running back stepping up in pass pro, and as soon as he takes that first step up in pass pro, you'll see on tape, guess what that backer does? Bails.
He bails.
Yeah. He's not coming, but guess who is? The outside backer off the edge, running the hump. And meanwhile, because that running back read it inside out and committed with that first step, he can't double back and reach that edge pressure. So it's a sack. It's a pressure. And I'm like, oh my, this is diabolical. Just the detail to which that goes into this. I'm like, this is just awesome stuff. And then they're so disciplined. Like, you'll see things happen that you might take for granted out of some defenses and just think, hey, we can do this or do that because we had success against this, success against that. Like, I was watching the Ole Miss game when Oklahoma went to Ole Miss last year. And they had a situation where Ole Miss was making some plays on the perimeter, okay, and they were having some success, break and contain once in a while. Well, you would think that as a result, Oklahoma, especially in a critical situation, is probably going to over-pursue to keep a cap on that, keep an edge on that perimeter. There was a critical 4th down and 1, and it was down on the 5-yard line or so in the red zone. Well, here comes Lane Kiffin. What's he do? But he dials up a slot reverse. He shows a sweep to the wide side of the field. He dials up a slot reverse to use the defensive over pursuit against it and burn them, like we did with Darius Raynaud in the Sugar Bowl, right, to Georgia when they were over pursuing.
Yep.
The problem was on that 4th and 1, Oklahoma didn't come close to over pursuing. They had not one, not two, but 3 defenders outside the edge holding contain on the backside where the reverse came back into, and it was a 4-yard TFL. They had 3 guys that stayed home, not one guy. You're lucky typically to find one guy on a defense savvy enough to stay home, trap, counter, reverse, and read that thing, right? He had 3 guys in position to make that play, and they knocked him for a TFL and got the ball back right before the half and a critical stop in the red zone. That's discipline. I mean, these are the types of little detailed things that the more tape you watch, the more you fall in love with the small things. He's stacking those pennies. We always talk about stacking pennies. He stacked a bunch of pennies. You saw him stack them at Monroe. Sometimes it translated into a win, sometimes it didn't, but he always made them better. Sometimes it just forced a different game situation. He stacked those pennies at Jackson State with Rich, and he stacked those pennies last year at Oklahoma. And when they were winning, in part, Terry Bowden said it when we had him on the show, it's because that defense was keeping them hanging around, right? But it's fun to watch those types of little details and understand some of that's going to correlate. Some of that's going to transfer into what we have at West Virginia. How do you want to handle any kind of quick personnel overview, Wes? Because I think we handled this the best way we could. We can blow through each position and key a couple of high points, but I don't think we need to belabor it with ripping through 60 names here. You know what I mean?
No, I don't either. And I think we're already over an hour on this episode or pretty close. So I don't think we need to get that deep in the woods. But we do need to thank our friends at Fortis and our buddy Rick Lewis for roof performance and financial certainty guaranteed. Make sure you visit fortis.us.com. And, of course, to the good people at Johnston Equipment, make sure you're checking out their location on Route 33 between Weston and Buchanan. I mean, yeah, Jed, like I said at the start of the episode, there's a few more familiar names on, I feel like, on the defensive side of the roster than the offensive side, at least. Not a ton, but a few more.
Yeah. And I would start with the D-line. I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. William Green is a guy who he's worked with Zac. He was at Jack State with Zac. He's coaching that D-line. I think he's going to be a great addition, and he's going to do a good job with this. And I think that defensive line might surprise some people. You have a couple critical transfers in there. I think Eddie Kelly's going to do a good job. He's had multiple stops, the most recent of which was at Missouri. Played some SEC football, big-bodied kid occupying one of those DNs. You have some other names in the mix there. I don't want to leave any out, but Eddie V, people are familiar with him. Asani Redwood's back. Hammond Russell, Nate Gabriel, Corey McIntyre. These are names that Mountaineer fans are familiar with, but there's also a couple they're not that I think as a collective, I want to see even after the first couple games. That's one of the things I'm going to study is I always took a very deep dive into that defensive line rotation last year, how it was handled, and I want to see how it's handled this year. But again, a lot's been made of what's going on off the field, outside the lines, with those 4 kids. One of those 4 kids playing that bandit spot. Trust me when I say that Jeff Castile, this isn't his first rodeo. He's not ambushed on any level by anything that is played out outside the lines. He is entirely and has been entirely focused on the kids that have been between the lines from the outset. And I think he's going to get some production from that room. I'm real excited about what Braden Siders can do, the transfer from Wyoming. Who played high school ball with one of our inside backers we'll talk about. I think Curtis Jones has a lot of upside. Marshawn Oxley coming on strong. Keenan Eck, I think, can do something. You're going to get some production from that room. First, because there's some talent in it. Second, because you have 2 Castiles coaching it. And 2 Castiles is better than 1, right? So, and when you look at the linebacker room, which Zac himself is working with, Reed Carrico's back. John Lewis, I think, is going to be a nice addition. Big body guy, can throw some meat around between the tackles there. Ben Cutter's back. Caden Beiser's back. You have some speed in this group as well. Chase Wilson I think he's going to be sneaky dynamic. I really do. Played high school ball with Braden Siders. Did some really good things at Colorado State. I'm really excited about what Chase will. I think he's going to be a dog for us defensively. I do. I think he's going to be one of our alphas. Ben Bogle, very productive career coming up, making the jump up to power conference football. Ashton Woods, a nice addition from North Carolina. He's made some plays through camp. And then the nickel spot, again, you bring in an assistant who has a lot of experience with Zac. I think that matters, and Coach Henry, and I think he's going to get a lot out of that room as well. You start with Fred Perry. I'm probably as excited about Fred Perry as anybody on this defense. He will just flat out smack you. And I'm excited to see what he can do. That's kind of that hybrid spot. When you think of the nickel, it's also the Sam. They don't see much of a difference. It's just from a personnel standpoint, how do you handle that? The modern nickel is the Sam linebacker in the old 4-3 defense when everybody was running pro style offenses. It's just now a spread offenses and 11 personnel, 3 wides on the field. You need a little more athleticism on the field, so you still need a physical presence, but somebody who can move better in space. Fred Perry can do that. William Davis, again, I love the spring that he had. I like some of the things he's done at camp as well. He's another guy repping there, making the jump up to power conference football. And Zay Jennings, I think, has a very bright future. So it's fun to see what's going to happen there. We'll close out with the back end. That corner room's interesting to me. There are a handful of guys that I've seen through camp make some really gifted plays. So I think it's going to be a function of consistency. They've definitely flashed the talent. They've flashed the ability. Is the consistency going to be there about some of those top contenders and Michael Coates and Jason Chambers and Jordan Scruggs? I mean, there's some fun guys to watch in that group. You could even go 7-8 deep in some of these names you're talking about, those corner spots. And then from a safety standpoint, KK is back. Tarnio, a guy you're familiar with, but not only that, but 2 years ago, he was playing with Zac Alley and Rich down at Jack State, a guy who sees the big picture from a scheme standpoint. Jordan Walker in the mix back there. There's some other new names in there as well. But from that back end, I think we have an opportunity to maybe get things with KK's understanding buttoned up because Zac does kind of put a premium on that. He will gamble, he will take chances, but they're kind of measured chances. Sometimes he goes for broke. Matter of fact, he forced more picks out of cover zero blitzes than any team in the SEC last year, but he doesn't do it often. He picks his spots. So he'll just as often bring a zone blitz from underneath and have a shell over top. And then the other safety spots, you need some physicality with that as well. I think you're going to find it, guys like Darian Lewis. I loved his tape at Akron. And what I've seen in camp is him flying around. He's not a lot of size. He's one of these wonder rats. He's 5'9", pushing 200 pounds, but he will smack you. And that Akron tape, that's all it was him just flying around smacking people. So Izzy Boyce is in the mix. Derek Carr, another transfer from Jack State who gets it. So those are some of the names from a broad overview. Look, until we get, so deep into the season, it's probably not going to be worth breaking down individual personnel as much as it is trying to acquaint people or acclimate people to what they're going to see from a scheme standpoint. And I think that's what we've tried to do with this format.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think that kind of ties back into, and I think a lot of people would agree with me, just so much more unknown about this team than we typically, have at this point in the calendar with the insane 70+ new faces on the roster. But that's a great point by you, Jed. Like the one thing we do know is how Rich wants to mold his offense, how Zac Alley wants to mold his defense, how those guys want to deploy, what their philosophies are. So I think this is good. I mean, I think this was a better conversation than just kind of sitting there and going through the entire roster and everything.
Who knows? This might be one of those years, guys, that we have a secret weapon in special teams. We don't know. Those things don't tend to emerge in camp because you're just not live in the transition units enough for them to emerge.
It's not live enough.
They're just not live enough. I mean, I think Ollie Straw can be a weapon. P. Fox is such a model of consistency. I love the fact the other day that Pat Curlin talked about, look, don't underestimate the value of a fair catch. Every time you make a fair catch, that's 10 to 20 yards that ball's not bouncing downfield to work against you, right? And, Antonic did a story off of that after Pat talked about it. And John's point was, look, 18 fair catches because he texted me to ask me, hey, how many have last year? And, well, he had, I think, 40 in his career, but 18 last year. And so, yeah, that's 200, 300 yards worth of hidden yardage so who knows? Do we have a kick returner? Maybe one of these kickoff returner guys that we don't know yet because, again, we're just not live yet enough. But you'd love to talk more about special teams this time of year. You just don't have enough proof of concept to do so,
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we're going to start getting our first data points, our beginning proof of concepts here. Just a little over a week. Man, it's crazy that it's here already, but I am excited. And with next week being game day, Jed, we are going to have our first edition. Owen, we are going to have our first edition.
2 announcements. Yeah, we got 2 announcements.
Barbecue with the beer truck, baby. That's going to be going to be awesome. That's going to be fantastic. On Monday, yep. So less than a week away, you will have your first barbecue with the beer truck, your game day recipes videos that we're rolling out all season with Big O, which is going to be delicious and just awesome and informative. Jed, we will also have the return of Phil Steele Fridays next week, correct?
Yep.
Which is a blast as always with the czar of college football. And we still, gentlemen, I think finally next week it'll be ready, which will be perfect leading into game week. We've got another exciting partnership that is just about all the T's are almost crossed and the I's are almost dotted on. That's going to be fun and exciting and come with some cool giveaways and some things that we're going to be doing here on the program as well.
A place that I frequented on Saturday after the scrimmage. I popped in and had to make my stop. But I'm going to say this. We will fall into a regular format in week 2. Next week's a little irregular because we don't have a game recap episode. So I wanted to give Owen's barbecue show as wide a berth as possible. So I parked it to kick off game week on Monday because, again, I've been going through these things, doing some post-production, and I think folks are going to love these. Owen and Ethan Gregory from ITG Clips. I'm telling you, don't underestimate the beer truck's mad skills. I mean, he's sitting there throwing down facts about this part of the meat and that muscle and that part of the fat, and they do this out there, and then he's telling stories from his playing days, and him and Ethan are yucking it up, and you know what? It's some of these things are pretty technical that he's doing, but somehow, some way, he walks you through it, and you're like, I think I might be able to do that. I think I might be able to. Some of them, the side dishes, I'm like, why didn't I think of that? Like, oh, and I'm telling you, once these things get rolling, I'll bring this up to. I'll tell you off air. I don't want to give away any spoilers with it, but there's one thing you did, and I think you should be selling it. I think you should be selling this one thing that you did. And you just mentioned it kind of in passing. And I'm like, whoa, what'd you just say? And my buddy brought it up to me. It was Ethan's dad. He's like, did you hear what he did with that bar? I said, yes, I heard too. But trust me, these things, they're not that long. It's a nice, quick little hit, quick little fix, 10, 15, 18 minutes, maybe most of these episodes. But it'll start our week off next week. I think once we fall into a normal circadian rhythm, it'll probably be Tuesdays these things will air. Because we want to get into a recap Monday, barbecue Tuesday, preview Thursday, Phil Steele Friday. But next week, I thought what a better way to start off the 2025 season than went barbecue with the beer trucks, maiden voyage on Monday. So look out for that. It's going to be fun. He starts the side dish and works up from there. But even the side dishes, I'm thinking, you're making me hungry, man. I'm like, you're making me hungry. Very well done. Tip of the cap.
Love it.
It'll be good, man. We had a fun time recording that stuff. We did.
It's gonna be a lot of fun to watch. And next week we'll share some more details. But if you've listened to the show before and you're familiar with where we tailgate and all those different things, it might be some opportunities for some folks to get some samples and some tastes of some beer truck barbecue at some upcoming or maybe all of the WVU home games this year, Big O. But we'll roll that out next week. We'll share the details next week.
Absolutely. I'm excited for that. And I am excited for that. And it's been awesome to see these people, fans, anybody listeners of the show come up. So I'm hoping we're going to get some interaction at the tailgate as well, because like what I said, we'll drop a couple details, and we'll have some tasty, smoky, meaty treats. Hopefully that you guys can enjoy.
Yeah, hopefully some beer truck loggers in there as well too. But again, we'll share all those details next week. And make sure you're tuning back in next week to get all the fine details. But that'll do it for us this week. So for our producer / co-host Schuyler Callihan, the barbecue and beer drinking beer truck Big O, and the signal caller Jed Drenning, I'm Wes Uhler. The one thing that we ask of you is to be an ear and tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast. Take care, everybody. We will talk to you on game week. You've been in the gun.
ITG. The fun doesn't have to stop here.
Be sure to hit subscribe and never miss an episode.
If you have any questions, suggestions, or feedback,
be sure to follow us on X at In the Gun Podcast.
Join us again next time.
Until then,
tell an ear to tell an ear about your new favorite WVU football podcast.
This mission is over. It's over.